No, I just said we have to wait and see what additional retaliation comes tonight. Um, and once gets its Israel and the United States, once they get their attacks underway inside Iran, and as Israel Katz already admitted that these attacks are being made by Iran with the United by helping the United States. And Katz got shut down on that pretty hard today. Criticized. That didn't mean it wasn't true. It was true, but he got in trouble for telling the truth.
CENTCOM was not happy about his comments, and do you expect tonight the United States attacking Iran and Iraqis attacking Saudi Arabia? Is that what we're going to see?
Um, I don't think the Saudis will be attacking Iran. They'll let the United States do that.
No, no, the United States attacking Iran and Iraqis attacking Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Well, no, the Iraqis aren't going to attack Saudi Arabia for a couple of days. Our buy-in's got to be over. But you'll see the Yemenis strike, I think. They may strike tonight. We'll see. It should be happening right now. We're not seeing any signs of immediate airstrikes from the United States. And normally you would by now.
Yeah.
There is report, but they said heavy U.S. military air activity visible across the Middle East, but it's not clear what that means.
We had some reports that some missiles were fired from Yazd in Iran. Later on, it wasn't confirmed that said nothing of that sort is happening, but there are Iranian fighter jets in the sky in Iran. They're patrolling the airspace of Iran and in some cities. And it seems that they're expecting a U.S. attack tonight.
Tonight's conflict isn't just about Iran anymore. According to former CIA analyst Larry Johnson, multiple countries are being pulled into a confrontation that could reshape the Middle East. In this interview, he argues that military stockpiles are shrinking, new enemies are emerging, and U.S. strategy may be creating consequences few expected. Whether you agree with him or not, his warnings raise difficult questions about where this conflict could go next.
That's because the attack made absolutely no sense. Because of the popular mobilization front status as a legally part of the government, it's the same as an attack on the Iraqi army, and so Iraq's going to retaliate here at some point. They're saying they're delaying it right now until our buy-in is finished. I don't know when the last date for that is, if it's Friday or Saturday. But once that's done, then I think you'll see them start retaliating. And, they'll be, here's Saudi Arabia now fighting against the Houthis and against the Iraqis and against Iran potentially. That makes no sense. It's just craziness.
Yeah. Do you think that Iraq would respond? Today it was the funeral. And how do you expect their reaction, their response?
Well, I think they'll respond with more drones. I'm not sure they have any missiles. I'm sure they have drones and they'll hit targets. They could even, attempt a cross-border incursion into some parts that they have access to. But they're going to retaliate, and it's going to create a problem for Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia doesn't have the military resources to fight a three-front war. But they're suddenly in a battle with Iraq, Iran, and Yemen.
And they have to decide, how about the affordability of those interceptors that they have? Because if they use drones, are they going to use their interceptors to intercept those drones? We know that these drones are so accurate. If they get there, they're going to hit exactly on the target.
Yeah. Well, if they have it, you use it or lose it would be my guidance. But once they use it, they're using up limited resources because they're using probably PAC-3 missiles. Once they're gone, they're gone. They're not going to replace them anytime soon.
Let's go to the basic question, Larry. Why does Saudi Arabia need to escalate instead of talking with these people?
I honestly don't know. It makes no sense. I can't argue that it makes them strategically stronger, that it weakens the Iraqis, it weakens the Houthis. Like I said, you try to look for a rational reason. Why would a country do this? What's it trying to accomplish? And what it's accomplished here is just saying, yeah, let's piss off the Iraqis.
Larry argues that Saudi Arabia's response may have increased regional tensions rather than reduced them. In his view, attacking Iraqi government-linked forces risks creating additional adversaries instead of improving security. Whether viewers agree with that assessment or not, this marks the interview's first major strategic argument and sets up the broader discussion about escalation.
Even though you'll get Trump supporters arguing that it's not about regime change, that's absolutely what it's about. You change the regime, and then the theory is then once Iran is a democracy and has the son of Reza Pahlavi as the new president, new leader, new poobah, all will be good. It's not true. But again, what we're confronted with are the limitations of U.S. military power. There are very few things. The United States has to lead by example. It can't compel by force. And it's doing a damn poor job on the example front.
There were two meetings between Donald Trump, Zelensky, and Benjamin Netanyahu. The two of them were fighting for their position in their countries. And one outcome of these two meetings would be that Donald Trump is ready to support both of them and to continue the war. Do you think that's the case?
Define support.
Yeah. I don't know how Donald Trump can help Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. Maybe that's one of the main.
All he can do is continue to provide some financial aid and some weapons and air defense systems. But the air defense systems are rapidly depleting, and Iran is in a position to destroy the rest. If they destroy them, then Ukraine would be they'd be in trouble. They don't have the ability to sustain combat operations, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. They want to stay in the fight. What Zelensky is prepared to offer, in my opinion, is the sort of attack they can have on Iranian or Russian vessels or ships between Iran and Russia.
But you saw what happened after Zelensky met with Trump. The Ukrainian foreign minister immediately came out and called Iraqi and they said, "Hey, we're sorry, that was a mistake." Why do you think he did that?
But it didn't happen before. It didn't happen before the meeting between Zelensky and Donald Trump.
No, it happened after. Why do you think it happened after?
Donald Trump told him that he's not going to. The only reason
that's correct. Donald Trump expressed unhappiness with that for whatever reason. Maybe not wanting to expand it. Maybe he'd gotten some phone calls from the Kremlin saying, if you're going down this path, this is where it's going to lead and you're not going to like it.
Is a weakened Saudi Arabia going to be helpful for the United States?
Well, define what you mean by weakened.
I'm talking about, let's assume these people attacking the Yemenis and Ansarullah attacking Saudi Arabia, destroying their oil facilities, Iraqi resistance doing the same, and the blockade is on their port, putting pressure on their economy as well. How is that gonna be perceived by the United States?
Well, not just the United States, it'll be perceived as Saudi Arabia is too weak to defend itself. So that's where this could get quite interesting because once you're perceived as weak, and again, the United States in the past could enforce policies on countries they may not have been happy to deal with, but they had no choice. and because the United States is so powerful. Well, now you get the question: the United States power. What are you going to do to me? Huh? You drop bombs you don't have?
This is the interview's strongest claim. Larry argues that the issue is no longer just military capability, but credibility. In his view, if allies and adversaries begin questioning America's ability to sustain operations, the geopolitical balance starts to shift.
We're witnessing options continuing to run out, even though the United States Senate claims that they're going to back this sanctions bill against any country that buys oil from Russia. Again, all that does is it further isolates the United States, creates more of an incentive for the other countries to get aligned with the Chinese and BRICS, so that they no longer can be held hostage by threats on the dollar front.
Do you think that the continuation of the war would be helpful for Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel and with the ongoing election, with the upcoming election in Israel?
You mean the war with Iran?
The war with Iran, exactly. Not with
Yeah.
Iran, basically the chaos in the West Asia, in my opinion, because the war with Iran is the name of the war. But you see everybody's attacking, all these countries are attacking each other as we see. It's some sort of chaos happening with these wars.
He's hoping that helps him. But I think the Israeli people have grown tired of his act, that he always trots out major international security threats. Iran's weeks away from having a bomb, et cetera, in order to spin up domestic support for himself, even though he's very unpopular compared to previous tries.
Yeah. The only reason that, in my opinion, Donald Trump would want to continue would be how is that going to help Israel? Because he's sacrificing I would argue, all the U.S. allies in the region, and nothing is getting better for Saudi Arabia. And Qatar doesn't want to be part of this. You don't see that much of role of Qatar in what's going on.
Right.
And nobody's hearing from Bahrain and Kuwait. The target of Iran right now is Jordan. Does that mean that the United States has everything? They have removed everything from these countries to Jordan, or the main, or the United States is using Jordan to do these attacks in Iraq, for example, as it was the recent attack?
Yeah. Well, what we've seen is and again, I think this is part of Iran's, let's call it their midterm strategy. They continue to hit the targets in Jordan, Mawafaq al-Salti, and Prince Hassan. And maybe King Khalifa was another air base. So the more they drive the U.S. forces out of there, then the less reliant the Jordanian people are on U.S. support. And you've already seen some movement among key political leaders, trying to distance themselves. They're not, apart from say the Senate saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to go after and enforce these new tariffs." The countries that are getting targeted, they're looking at. They're not going to be friends with the United States. They're going to look for help with the global South.
We had the deputy foreign minister of Iran, Larry, yesterday talking about the Iranian policy in the Strait of Hormuz. He said there are two lines of the strait. One goes in, the other one gets out.
Mm-hmm.
And Iran wants to control 1.5 lines. It means that they want to have the full control for the entry, and for the exit line would be half of that, or somehow partial control of that. This is the argument on the part of Iranians. Oman has suggested that they want to separate these two lines, one being coordinated or managed by Oman, the other one by Iran. And it seems the main difference is there. What is your understanding? Who's gonna get who's gonna have the upper hand? The United States together? I assume that what Oman is suggesting is coming from the United States.
Yeah, but it's not going to prevail. Iran's not going to relinquish its control. So no matter what, this could have been another camel nose under the tent effort by the United States using Oman, trying to get Israel so firmly committed to negotiations that the United States will be able to pull the plug on them at whatever point it was convenient for the United States.
Is the perception of the Strait of Hormuz gonna get? Is that the reality of the Strait of Hormuz is that gonna be acceptable for the Republican Party, for Democrats, or they're gonna support Donald Trump in the ongoing fight for the Strait? I want to know the support of the political parties in the United States for the continuation of the war.
The war has very, very little political support, and until people start paying more money at the gas station and at the big box stores, they're going to passively go along with it. I said it's only when the crisis hits is there sudden motivation to fix it.
So if they don't support the war, what would be their solution for the Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz? Let's assume they don't. To be honest, nobody wants.
You mean Oman or?
No, the political parties in the United States, Democrats and Republicans. There are two options. One of them is to stop the war, start talking with Iranians, or continuation of the war. You mentioned that at least the public opinion, more than 60 or 74% of Americans, they're against the war and they don't want the war.
Right.
And what would be the alternative for political parties in the United States?
Well, I think it's not the political parties. Depending on what we've seen is there's a crossover between Republican and Democrats when it comes to Ukraine. Similar crossover when it comes to Israel and the Palestinian cause. So that means it's always up to the president to set the agenda and declare, okay, this is what we've agreed to, this is what we're going to implement. And barring that, if he doesn't, like we saw with the MOU, he basically declined to implement it, and the Iranians said, okay, screw it, we're not going to follow it ourselves. And I think from the standpoint of it really doesn't put them in a powerful position. But what we are seeing is that more and more countries are lining up to question and challenge U.S. ability to deliver on its threats.
Larry expands the discussion beyond the battlefield. His argument is that sanctions, military commitments, and shifting alliances are encouraging more countries to look outside the U.S.-led system. In his view, if more governments begin doubting Washington's ability to enforce its policies, the geopolitical landscape could change well beyond the current conflict.
Larry, great pleasure. I know, yes, you told me yesterday it was a long day for you, but you encountered someone so interesting. What did you learn from him?
Well, I can't really go into it. I just let me put it this way: this is someone who's around your age, who's been involved with the global war on terror since the early 2000s, and he is now in a position involved. He's involved with both the wars in Ukraine and in Iran, and that's what's interesting because you talked about that attack in the Caspian Sea, trying to unite the fronts. Well, in fact, they're already united behind the scenes, at least from an intel standpoint and from a weapon standpoint. But what this individual expressed to me was, he had bought into, if you will, the anti-Muslim rhetoric that, Iran is a bunch of fanatical Muslims, et cetera, at the outset. And he said, in the course of his interactions dealing with both Israelis and, dealing with Muslims in Iraq and in Afghanistan, he said, it's not what he was told. He says, I've learned that I was being fed a line that is not true. And he says when, in fact, in dealing with people with a more humane approach, he was surprised that he was finding himself in agreement with uh, the Muslims he was dealing with, not Islamists, but
Mm.
Muslims. Yeah, I use the term the Islamists or Islamic extremists for that very, very narrow group of Sunnis that want to, sort of kill all heretics. Anyway, it's interesting that you've got people in senior leadership positions that are reevaluating what they've been propagandized to believe for 25 years.
After nearly 40 minutes of discussing military strategy and regional escalation, the interview shifts to something more personal. Larry recounts a conversation with someone involved in national security who, according to him, changed long-held assumptions after years of firsthand experience. Whether viewers agree with his conclusions or not, the story serves as the interview's final reflection, suggesting that direct experience can reshape beliefs that have been accepted for decades. Whether Larry Johnson's predictions ultimately prove accurate or not, his central message is clear. Conflicts rarely remain contained. As more countries become involved and alliances shift, the consequences extend well beyond the battlefield. The real question isn't just who wins the next confrontation, but whether diplomacy can prevent an even larger one.